Hey everyone, Beardo here. You're watching MINUTIA Minute, and it's time for a fantastic Wednesday haul of comics. Batman, Saga, Punk Rock Jesus. I mean, what could be better? The only thing that would be better is if Wonder Woman came out this week as well. But then, of course, I wouldn't have anything to read for next week. So, I'm going to do things a little bit differently this week, so just be prepared for that. Also, I should note, I have 5 books I'm reviewing for you, but there's 3 books you're not going to see in this video. Batman number 14, Suicide Squad number 14, and Batgirl number 14 are all going to be part of my Death of the Family coverage coming up right after this video. Hopefully it'll post any minute after you're done watching this. What I am going to review are the other 5 books that I got this week. Yeah, it was a big haul this week. And the thing that's going to be different is I'm going to start focusing a little bit more on particular books rather than trying to do an in-depth review of everything. So I'm going to have a spotlight book, and then I'm going to just kind of briefly talk about the other books I get. So we're going to kick it off with, as usually these are ordered from least favorite to most favorite, the Spotlight book coming at the end. And we're going to kick it off with X-Treme X-Men number 6. Now, when I read X-Treme X-Men number 5 and reviewed that for you guys, I had some worries, which is, you know, the story seems like it's just kind of one adventure after the next, and it kind of has an overarching arc, but it doesn't seem to really add up to much. And I felt like the dialogue was a little stiff and the characters were maybe a little bit flat, even though the story and like the concept was a lot of fun. And so I wasn't sure if I was going to be picking it up. Well, I can say with issue number 6 that I am going to be picking this up on a regular basis, at least while it's in publication, because I've heard this book isn't really selling a lot of copies. I do recommend it. It's pretty entertaining. It's not the best book I'm reading, but with this issue you do get a little bit more character development. You get some just tiny little moments with actually most of the characters that really helps to flesh them out a little bit. There's a really interesting moment with what is he, like the Teddy Roosevelt of Wolverines from his world. You find something interesting about his personal life that is played off in a very entertaining way that both informs us about him and about Dazzler a little bit. The big thing we focus on here is Kurt Wagner and sort of the world he comes from and how that sort of colors his past and who he is, which was very interesting. And then finally we throw a big sort of wrench in the whole system of assassinating all of these evil Xaviers, which is, you know, it's never as simple as good versus evil. And at the end of this book, while it's not necessarily anything to write home about in terms of mind-blowing, you know, thematic developments, it was a satisfying twist that's going to give this book just a little bit more dimension and give us just a little bit stronger read from month to month, I hope. So overall, X-Treme X-Men issue 6, looking up and enjoying the read so far. Alright, next up I have ExSanguine, which is another book that, this is issue 2. I read issue 1 and reviewed that for you last time, and I wasn't sure if I was going to keep picking it up. For now, I'm pretty intrigued. The thing about this book is, it's kind of like vampire noir. It doesn't look like noir in like the sense of like shadows and blinds and all that kind of stuff. But some of the thematic elements are very noirish. You've got, in the first issue, you've got this vampire who's kind of minding his own business, who is approached by this woman who turns out to be a serial killer and frames him for the killing that she's just sort of, you know, executed. And this issue opens with him at police headquarters being interrogated, and who shows up but to give him an alibi but the serial killer, femme fatale female that he's suddenly inexorably linked with despite his best efforts. And she sort of leads him on a merry chase in which, you know, she basically gets him to do everything that she wants, using her feminine wiles all the way. And at the very end, you see that she's not necessarily just a serial killer, but she has a larger ulterior motive. And it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, how far down the noir rabbit hole she goes as sort of a femme fatale, or if this is just sort of the beginning of something much larger. So all in all, issue 2 is an interesting read. I'm not quite sure where it's headed yet, but there's definitely some very strong and interesting plot threads coming up. So check this book out if you haven't checked it out. I don't know if this is a limited series, I'm assuming it is, but it's definitely worth checking out. It's a good read. Alright, the middle of the road book this week And it was a good book. I was expecting it to be close to #1, but just because there was so much good stuff this week, it ended up middle of the road. Was Amazing Spider-Man issue 697. Now, this book was extremely entertaining to read. You get the conclusion of the Danger Zone story arc, and just when Spider-Man, you know, thinks that Madame Web was wrong, it's like, hey, I saved the day, I knew I would, kind of moment. We as readers know that it's only going to get worse from here. Not only because we've seen the solicitations for you know, what comes after Amazing Spider-Man 700, but all of the little plot threads and all of the little sort of subtle danger moments that Dan Slott has set up, and just panel here, panel there throughout the course of this issue and the last issue, shows that the next few issues are going to be pretty huge. My big question is, how are they going to wrap this up in the next 3 issues? I know that there's going to be a 699.1, which has been advertised all over the Marvel books this week, but it sounds like that's going to be kind of a side story to the main, you know, event that's going on with Amazing Spider-Man. So it's going to be interesting to see how all of this really wraps up, and you know, how well it's going to wrap up. My big worry with this going forward, with only a couple issues left, is that, you know, it's not going to necessarily seem like a big last hurrah for Peter Parker. It's going to seem like an abrupt ending. So we'll have to see. But I will say, you know, after struggling with this book for the first couple months I was getting it, I'm going to be sad to not be getting this, because I'm not planning on getting Superior Spider-Man, and it's just too bad. I'm actually gonna miss this title after whining and complaining about it for 6 months. The last like 4 months have kind of sold me on it. It's gonna be kind of sad to see it go. So there you go. Penultimate book I read this week was Saga issue #7. This is a very transitionary issue, and I feel bad giving this runner-up to pick of the week in some ways, kind of for the same reason I felt with Wonder Woman last month, which was, you know, we're really just getting things to where they're going to be, but the writing's still solid, and I'm just such a sucker for this title. So in this issue, we meet the parents, Marco's parents. Everybody kind of splits off and has to go their separate ways. They're going to go rescue Isabel. In the meantime, Marco's wife, Alana. Is her name Alana? Alana and Marco's father are stuck in this spaceship together, and it's all about just setting up those family dynamics and the relationship, but it's really not going to start to pay off at issue 7. My girlfriend read this right after I'd read it, and you know, she said exactly the same thing I was thinking when she finished, which is like, these read too fast and it's over too soon. And it's not to say that it's bad writing and it's, you know, like overly extended story, because it, you know, it flows very nicely, but you really just want to read issue 8 as soon as you're done with issue 7. There is one moment in this, for all of you adult readers out there who are thinking about letting your kids read Saga, that you should definitely not let them do that. One of the most disgusting things I've ever seen is in this book this week. So other than that though, great read. Alright. Spotlight book, the book I really want to talk about this week, the book that really blew me away. Punk Rock Jesus, issue 5 of 6. I don't even know where to start. I mean, this is a phenomenal, phenomenal read, and it's so sad that we're on 5 of 6, because there's only one more month of this left before everything wraps up. Issue 4 was very much a transitionary issue. It was kind of like the book where it was like, we're going to need a montage book, and that was where they got all of the pieces to where they were going to be. You got the final realization of, you know, our Jesus 2 as punk rock Jesus, and it was a big question mark at the end of the book of, okay, so where is this going to go now? And, you know, on the surface, this is a pretty straightforward story. You have these religious extremists that have really messed up life for someone, you know, this Jesus figure who's going to go out and get revenge on them. That's pretty much the plot of the story at this point. However, this is so much more than that. It is truly, in my eyes, like the best kind of science fiction that's out there, because you take a relatively straightforward premise. In this case, it's what if we could clone Jesus? And it builds something so strong off of that. I mean, you know, you've got the IRA, you've got, you know, religious extremism, and you've got all of these real-world elements, and you really only change one thing, which is, hey, we cloned Jesus. And you see how all of that, you know, builds into something that tells us something about ourselves as people and as humans, and, you know, just talks about human nature and just the state of Western culture and, you know, all of these things that become so clear when you read something like Punk Rock Jesus issue number 5, all by just changing one simple thing and taking, you know, one little scientific premise like cloning and just, you know, plugging that in and seeing what happens. So the thing about this book is it's very relatable. You get a sense that Chris, you know, he's spent all this time reading, he's become an atheist, and he, you know, embodies the very extremism that he's fighting against, and that I think a lot of atheists kind of struggle with, in terms of, you know, it's really easy to sort of condemn religion if you're an atheist, but at the same time, like, you're oftentimes being equally extreme or equally inappropriate as any religious extremist. And this book really balances that line well, because all of these people end up being generally sympathetic characters, and none of them are in the right, but all of them are, you know, we're invested in all of them and we care about all of them. The really breakthrough thing about this issue is we finally get to see what the role of, and I can't remember his name now, but the former IRA member that's been helping Chris and Gwen along the road, Thomas? Is it? Shoot, I can't remember his name. Anyway, we've been seeing snippets of his past. We've been really getting to know this guy, and he's very much the crux of the whole story, because he is really is going to be the person that shows Chris, you know, where Chris has gone wrong. And if Chris doesn't see it, we as readers get to see it, and we get to see it in this issue, and all of that sort of backstory with him, that in the scheme of, isn't this a book about Punk Rock Jesus, seems kind of like weird that it's there. All of a sudden, all of that history with the IRA and all of that nuance of that character comes into the main thematic story in this book, and like I said, it's just a brilliant read. This is a phenomenal book. Now, it's on issue 5. There's only one issue left to read, and I'm not going to recommend you go pick this up if you haven't been picking it up already, but you must get the trade. If you're a fan of science fiction, this is a must-read for you, and it's one of the best books of 2012 for sure. So there you go. Spotlight on Punk Rock Jesus. Definitely the pick of the week this week. Alright, so I will be back soon to talk about Death in the Family, my special Death of the Family coverage episode. That will be hopefully right after this video. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this review, and thank you all for watching. See you soon.